Hi. Well, it's a lovely late golden afternoon on the Thames, and I'm just south of Osney Bridge, which is over there. I came down the Thames from Port Meadow and then had to divert behind the Thames path because Thames water have blocked where the path hits Botley Road. But I've crossed Botley Road at Osney Bridge, and I'm back now on the Thames, as I say, and in fact I'm at the end of East Street in Osney, and I've just ordered a coffee from a pub that used to be called the Waterman's Arms and is now called the Punter. And I'm going to read the next episode of Alice in Wonderland. So, in the first part of the chapter, Alice was talking to the caterpillar. The caterpillar is sitting on a mushroom, smoking a hookah. And she's trying to explain to the caterpillar how she can't keep the same size for 10 minutes together, and she can't remember things as she once did. And the caterpillar doesn't really understand why she worries about changing size, because after all it does whenever it changes a life stage from caterpillar to butterfly or whatever. So she explains what sort of things she can't remember, and she tells the caterpillar that she tried to say, "How doth the little busy bee," but it all came out differently. And then it asks her to repeat, "You are old, Father William." And I need to add a note by Martin Gardner here. He says, "You are old, Father William," is one of the undisputed masterpieces of nonsense verse. It is a clever parody of Robert Southey's long-forgotten didactic poem, The Old Man's Comfort and How He Gained Them. And Carol had a lot of fun writing parodies to poems like that. And often the parodies are now better remembered. He used a lot of them in his stories, and "You Are Old, Father William" is one. The poem is fun, and so are the illustrations there and there. So the caterpillar has listened to her saying, has listened to her reciting, "You are old, Father William," and has told her that it's not said quite right. And it then asks her what size she wants to be, and it tells her that she can control her size by eating either the left side or the right side of the mushroom it's sitting on, and then it goes away. And Alice tries this, and she finds that at last she has a way of reliably controlling her size. She swallows a bit of the mushroom that makes her bigger, and this is where I left off last time. "Come, my head's free at last," said Alice in a tone of delight, which changed into alarm in another moment when she found her shoulders were nowhere to be found. All she could see when she looked down was an immense length of neck which seemed to rise like a stalk out of a sea of green leaves that lay far below her. "What can all that green stuff be?" said Alice. "And where have my shoulders got to? And oh, my poor hands, how is it I can't see you?" She was moving them about as she spoke, but no result seemed to follow, except a little shaking among the distant green leaves. as there seemed to be no chance of getting her hands up to her head. She tried to get her head down to them, and was delighted to find that her neck would bend about easily in any direction like a serpent. She had just succeeded in curving it down into a graceful zigzag, and was going to dive in among the leaves, which she found to be nothing but the tops of the trees under which she had been wandering, when a sharp hiss made her draw back. A large pigeon had flown into her face and was beating her violently with its wings. "Serpent!" screamed the pigeon. "I'm not a serpent," said Alice indignantly. "Let me alone." "Serpent, I say again," repeated the pigeon, but in a more subdued tone, and it added with a kind of sob, "I've tried every way, but nothing seems to suit them." "I haven't the least idea what you're talking about," said Alice. Okay, well, I've just refreshed myself with a cup of punter cappuccino. Very good. "Serpent, I say again," repeated the pigeon, but in a more subdued tone, and it added with a kind of sob, "I've tried every way, but nothing seems to suit them." "I haven't the least idea what you're talking about," said Alice. "I've tried the roots of trees, and I've I've tried the roots of trees, and I've tried banks, and I've tried hedges," the pigeon went on, without attending to her. "But those serpents, there's no pleasing them." Alice was more and more puzzled, but she thought there was no use in saying anything more till the pigeon had finished. "As if it wasn't trouble enough hatching the eggs," said the pigeon, "but I must be on the lookout for serpents night and day. Why, I haven't had a wink of sleep these 3 weeks." "I'm very sorry you've been annoyed," said Alice, who was beginning to see its meaning. "And just as I'd taken the highest tree in the wood," continued the pigeon, raising its voice to a shriek, "and just as I was thinking I should be free of them at last, they must needs come wriggling down from the sky. Ugh, serpent!" "But I'm not a serpent, I tell you," said Alice. I'm a... "Well, what are you?" said the pigeon. "I can see you're trying to invent something." I'm a little girl," said Alice rather doubtfully, as she remembered the number of changes she had gone through. "A likely story indeed," said the pigeon, in a tone of the deepest contempt. "I've seen a good many little girls in my time, but never one with such a neck as that. No, you're a serpent, and there's no use denying it. I suppose you'll be telling me next that you never tasted an egg." "I have tasted eggs, certainly," said Alice, who was a very truthful child. "But little girls eat eggs quite as much as serpents do, you know." "I don't believe it," said the pigeon. "But if they do, why, then they're a kind of serpent, that's all I can say." This was such a new idea to Alice that she was quite silent for a moment or two, which gave the pigeon the opportunity of adding, "You're looking for eggs, I know that well enough, and what does it matter to me whether you're a little girl or a serpent?" "It matters a good deal to me," said Alice hastily, "but I'm not looking for eggs as it happens, and if I was, I shouldn't want yours. I don't like them raw." "Well, be off then," said the pigeon in a sulky tone, as it settled down again into its nest. Alice crouched down among the trees as well as she could, for her neck kept getting entangled among the branches, and every now and then she had to stop and untwist it. After a while, she remembered that she still held the pieces of mushroom in her hands, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first one and then the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter, until she had succeeded in bringing herself down to her usual height. It was so long since she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first, But she got used to it in a few minutes and began talking to herself as usual. Come, there's half my plan done now. How puzzling all these changes are. I'm never sure what I'm going to be from 1 minute to another. However, I've got back to my right size. The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is that to be done, I wonder? As she said this, she came suddenly upon an open place with a little house in it about 4 feet high. Whoever lives there, thought Alice, it'll never do to come upon them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits. So she began nibbling at the right-hand bit again, and did not venture to go near the house until she had brought herself down to 9 inches high. And that is the end of chapter 5. The next chapter will be 6, Pig and Pepper. See you then.